Michael Kula is the VP of Sales at Avalon Integration, an integrator of mobile data collection, thermal printing, and RFID technologies primarily used in the supply chain. He currently manages a team of 10 salespeople and is a big proponent of consultative selling. He's been in sales since 1994 and lives in the Philadelphia area. On a personal note, Michael is getting married in 2021. Stay tuned for Mike. Mike, it's really great having you with us today. Welcome to the show.
Hey, great to see you. Thanks, Mike, for having me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to mining some of that sales wisdom that you have.
I hope.
Speaking of sales wisdom, I want to ask you some good questions that are going to help our viewers to improve how they sell based on some of the ideas and tips that you have. So, first question, right out of the gate. You've been in sales for a long time, Mike, just like me, and it's changed over the years. How do you think sales has changed since you entered the field?
I would say that customers are a lot more aware of what they're looking for due to the internet and YouTube and all these other types of things that are out there where you can go do your research, kind of like in your daily life, right? You're going to go, I recently bought a refrigerator. I think I knew more about the refrigerator than the sales guy did at Home Depot, right? Because I researched it. So, I would say what's probably changed is things move a lot faster. Real important that your information on LinkedIn and about your company and all that stuff is updated because people are doing the research before they're calling you. Certainly wasn't the case in 1997, right? I don't even know if I had a LinkedIn page in 1997.
Right.
So lots of change.
You just touched on something with your Home Depot refrigerator item there. That leads me into my next question. I've heard that some buyers will go as far as 70% through the buyer's journey before needing or wanting to talk to a salesperson. Has that been true in your experience?
Yeah, I think so. Clients definitely are a lot more aware of the products that we sell and the solutions that we sell and educated on that. So, where I used to maybe, spend a lot of time early on about, how does a barcode scanner work as an example, people have pretty much figured that out. What they're really looking for is a lot more in-depth information on how it's going to work in their particular application. So absolutely, they're way more educated and aware of the solution before they ever pick up the phone and talk to me.
And do you think that it's possible that some customers don't even want to talk to a salesperson? I mean, if they just could do the whole thing online, that they'd rather just skip the process and do so?
I would say yes, generally not my customers. I mean, obviously with COVID, I think I've had 2 meeting customer visits in a year.
Right.
Right. And I used to be on the road every day and traveling, I think I drove 35,000 miles a year. I haven't even driven 5,000 miles last year.
Right.
I think people are definitely relying a lot more on technology, right? Zoom, Google Meet, all those type of things. So there is certainly, a sense of customer that knows exactly what product they want and will go shop it online and just buy it. But generally, the solutions that we're selling does require a little consultation and a little discussion with the customer. So we still get that little face-to-face interaction. It just happens to be over a computer camera.
So a key part of your answer there is not my customers. And that's because you believe in a consultative sales process. And I get that. But for those of us that don't necessarily understand exactly what that entails, what do you think makes a salesperson consultative?
I think the main thing is you got to be empathetic, right? You got to understand and put yourself in the position of your customer, understand what their challenges are every day. As salespeople, we're kind of living in our world, but it's hard to put myself in the position of someone that might be in a Fortune 500 company or a mom and pop company, and things are moving left and right. The one thing that I've kind of noticed is we can't create more time. And people are being stretched thinner and thinner, being asked to do things more. So that consultative sales process really allows us to, work with the customer, convey to them that, I understand what your problems are. I think we can be successful together, and this is how we're going to do that. So that consultative sales process really allows you to um, establish that level of trust, which is really critical almost on that first interaction with the customer.
Speaking of that first meeting with the customer, that's usually a make or break moment. Either you establish a good initial impression, start forming that relationship and building trust, or you don't. And I know a lot of people that watch my channel are newer to sales. And when they have a big meeting, they might not be 100% sure how to prepare. So share with us, Mike, what are your tips to prepare well for a big meeting?
Well, what I tell everyone on my team is research, 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 right?
Mm,
Try to understand everything about your customer, what's going on in their organization, what their role is in the company, what their decision-making ability is. And then really try to, again, put yourself in their position and try to identify any obstacles that would prevent them from being successful. Um, I always tell my folks, you have to have an answer to the question before it's ever raised, right? And if you do that, the process just seems to go a lot smoother. So, for example, we sell mobile computing, and for the vast majority of my career, it was a Windows mobile computer that really didn't change that much, and customers kind of got used to that. Well, those days are gone, and now we're in Android, and we really have a lot different level of conversation with the customer when we're talking about Android, because there's an expectation that it's going to change, and it's constantly changing. So, again, I kind of look at a customer, and if they have an overburdened IT staff, then we're going to talk about, well, here are all these changes in Android, and here are the things that you're going to need to be aware of going forward. And here's where we can help you be successful.
I want to go back to something that you said at the beginning of that last answer. When you say research, 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 tell us what areas should they be researching? Is it the competition, the industry, the company they're potentially doing business with, the person? What is it exactly?
So a little bit of everything. First thing is, go to the company's website, right, and understand what's going on in their organization. Understand what products they're selling. Understand where their locations are. If they're publicly held, look at their financials, so you get a sense of that. Obviously, the next logical place is LinkedIn, right, and try to identify. Number one, what's always been amazing to me is if I'm talking to someone, many times they may already be connected with one of my contacts, right?
Mhm.
So I can then leverage that relationship that I may have, or that contact that I may have, to try to broach that with the customer a little bit further. But generally, it's LinkedIn, it's the website. You may look at YouTube as well to see if there's any videos with that person up on YouTube, just to
Yeah.
get a sense of what's going on in their environment.
Interesting. Okay, so it's really the company and the individual that they should be researching.
I was on a call, on a phone call a couple of weeks ago. It's the first time I met this person. He was this pretty senior person in the organization. And, it was helpful to say, hey, I understand that you've been with that company 24 years, right? Which is kind of unusual for, today's realm. A lot of
True.
people jump jobs. And the only way I would have ever known that was to see that on LinkedIn, right? And see what his background was and where he was before he joined the company that he was at. So it's those type of little things, I think, that make a big difference, and really allow you to connect with someone when you have they know you did your homework, right? You're just not out there to sell them something because you picked up the phone.
I share in my videos and blog posts so often that doing your homework gives you the edge of showing that you're more concerned about coming across as being interested in knowing the other person's situation and who they are. That if you ask a question like, so how long have you been with the company? And the guy's been there for 24 years, and it's plain as day on his LinkedIn profile, and you didn't even know that. Well, that's a big strike right away.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot easier to say, so I see you've been with the company for 24 years, right?
Exactly.
What's that been like? What changes have you seen?
Mhm.
That generates a whole different level of conversation with that person.
Right. Let's shift gears a bit. how do you get a prospect enthusiastic about doing business with you? So they aren't agreeing to a meeting yet, right? In this scenario, you're hitting them up for the first time. They are pre-qualified and you've established that they would be a good fit. How do you get them to be enthusiastic for the meeting?
That's a tough question. I think obviously, the hardest thing is to uh, get someone to connect with you on the phone, especially in the world that we're living in today. Most people are still working out of their home offices. No one's really picking up their phone if they don't know the number on it any longer.
Mhm.
So I rely a lot on email. I rely a lot on um, a technology tool called Calendly, where I
Mhm.
say, "Hey, I really want to talk to you about this. If you click on this link, um, book a time on my calendar. That's convenient for you." I find that happens a lot, more than you think, or at least more than I thought when I first started using it. I was like, "Who's really going to click on that link?" And I would say every week I probably have an average of 5 to 8 people that use that link and book time on my calendar, because that's just showing, I'm respectful of their time, right? Everyone's got things that are going on in their lives. But I think the biggest thing that I do is when I do have an opportunity to talk to someone, I listen. I let them do a lot more talking than I do. I ask lots of questions. I'm really trying to understand where they're coming from
Mhm.
and what they're trying to solve. I put myself again in their position, right? Yeah, when I was in the market for buying a car, if a sales guy said, "What do we have to do to make a deal today?" It was just a giant turnoff for me, right? Because I'm not ready to make that deal today. What I'm really interested in is tell me more about the car so I could think about that and make a decision. And that's how I buy products in my own life, and I try to do the similar type thing with people that I'm trying to sell to.
And that kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about how sales has changed and moves faster, but people are doing more research on their own.
Hmm.
And when they do approach a salesperson, it may be for more research, not necessarily to buy yet.
Yeah, it generally is. You're right, right? They're information. They're gathering information. They're trying to formulate a strategy. Again, a lot of these folks are working remotely as well, like I am right now.
Mhm.
So it's not like they could just go pull, someone down the hallway and say, "Hey, what do you think?" Right? They're out getting information, and then they're meeting with them to have that discussion to kind of get to the next step.
So one of the issues in the sales process, Mike, is objections, right? People
Hmm.
people put up objections,
Yeah.
and one of the most difficult is the price objection.
Hmm.
You've had a lot of experience over the years dealing with the price objection. How do you approach that when someone says, "Oh, that's just too expensive"?
Well, what I've learned over time is you talk budget early on in the process, usually in that first initial meeting,
Mm,
right? Because it's important that a potential customer understands what the cost implications are of the solution. Generally, I don't get a lot of pushback because again, I have to do my research. If I'm selling a solution, I can go price that out on the internet. That's the first place that the customer is going to go look for that as well. So I have to make sure that whatever we're pricing at is competitive. I always tell our customers, I may not be the cheapest because someone that has no sales expense or service expense like we do may be willing to come in and take that at a lower, a greater discount at lower margins, but will definitely be competitive for the value that we're adding. So if pricing still becomes kind of a gating factor, then I know we're out of alignment somewhere, right? And I kind of got to go at that point. I either got to back up and let's understand what our bill of materials is, or let's work on a solution that's acceptable to both sides. So, an example is we had a pretty large client, or very large client, I should say, wanted additional discounting on the stuff that on the equipment that we were selling them, and they were
yeah.
already getting a really good discount. Um, you know, the initial reaction was no, right? You're already getting a big enough discount.
Yeah.
But we worked with our manufacturing rep, we worked with our distributor, and we were able to go back to the customer and say, okay, we could save you money on this and give you additional discount, but we're going to want you to buy 5 years of maintenance instead of 3 years of maintenance, because that was important to us. And the client ended up doing that. And we were able to show them that if you bought 3 years of maintenance now and then bought the 2-year maintenance, in year 3, what his cost would have been versus what we were charging him now, it made a lot more sense for him to buy that today. And the client has done that. And, he's been buying 3-year maintenance for the last 10 years, right? This is the first year that he's gone to 5-year maintenance, which is a big win-win for all of us.
Right.
So, so I guess the focus is really trying to make sure that economically we're all in a position that we can support the client for the lifetime of solution. I had a customer tell me that once. He's like, I know you need to make money. Otherwise you wouldn't be in business. And I want you to be around for the long term to help us. So, again, it's making sure that everyone is under the same expectations. I share with customers the discount levels they're getting. So for example, if you have a customer that's getting a 40% discount off the list price, it's important to say that. A lot of salespeople, in my experience, don't want to tell them that, right? They just want to say, here's your price. And I think it's important to say, here's your price. And oh, by the way, it's 40% off of list price.
Mm-hmm.
That's the discount you're getting. And customers look at that and say, okay, they're being reasonable with me. And I think generally that's what people are looking for. They just want someone to be reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And you reminded me of one of my earlier bosses who taught me to respect vendors and their need to make a good living as well, because you want them around. A good vendor relationship that you can rely on and go back to makes your life easier.
That's a really good point that you bring up. A lot of things that we implement for our customers, we buy from a manufacturer. And, we really put a lot of effort into our manufacturing relationships, because if I need to ask them for a favor, because we need a lower price for whatever requirement, it's a lot easier to do that when we have a positive relationship that we interact with versus me, constantly beating on them to do a better job. So I think that at the end of the day really, really helps us for a lot of the opportunities that we have where price objections do come up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like your point about bringing up the budget earlier on and just establishing that there is appropriate budget, because why go far down the road only to be hit with the price objection? So it really is your error for not having had some conversation around that early on. And that's where a lot of newer salespeople get scared, Mike. They don't want to talk about budget early on because they think it'll be a turnoff.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that's the way to go.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. They're nervous about that, right?
Yeah.
And I have a salesperson in our company that every year for his top customers, in January, he kind of puts together a summary. Here are all the things that you've purchased from me last year. Thank you very much, right? And then he has a counterpart that never wants to do that with his customers, right? And I don't want to tell the customer that he spent, $500,000 with us. I'm like, guess what? He already knows that. Right. Yeah. So you might as well just get out in front and tell them that. But I think, pricing is a hard discussion, right? And customers, they're not having discussion thinking they're going to get it for free, right? No one's expecting that. But I think if you say, hey, you can go take my price and you can go shop that on the internet, because a lot of the components that we sell, you can find pieces of that on the internet. You're going to get a price of that. And all of a sudden you're going to look at that and say, yeah, Avalon's giving us a good deal. Right. We're going to go with them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. So we talk about newer salespeople a couple of times here, and those are often people that are watching these videos to try and learn how they can not make mistakes and do more of the right things. Yeah. What are mistakes that newer salespeople often make?
Good question, because I have 2 brand new salespeople that came to us without any experience in our industry, or in fact, sales, right? And the reason I hired them is because they had all the qualities that I couldn't teach them, right? They were well organized, they were good communicators, they were competitive. Those things I can't teach, right? And that's hard for anyone to teach someone those skills when certainly at our age, but even if you're in your 20s or 30s, right? You're either organized or you're not. So the common mistakes that I do see is lack of preparation, right? They don't spend enough time on it, and they kind of wing it. And it shows. And what's been interesting is my salespeople, these newer people, have been on phone calls with me, with customers, and maybe a vendor rep from another organization, and that vendor rep is really pushing hard. And when we hang up the phone, I call my salespeople. I'm like, "What did you learn?" They're like, "Don't ever act like that," because they weren't listening. All they wanted to know was, when were you going to buy? Because they were just narrowly focused on that. So I think it's important that salespeople really spend the time to listen to the customer, be prepared for it. A lot of times they fail to comprehend what the customer is saying. I've been in meetings where we're co-selling with someone, and the person that we're there with is like, "Well, let me show you this PowerPoint and all our solutions," and the customer's like, "Yeah, I'm not really interested in that," and they go off, they show that PowerPoint, all right, and
Anyway.
take them right down the road anyway, right? And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So in our company, in our organization, let's take the Android mobile computing again. There could be hundreds of configuration options. So if you don't listen to a customer and what they might need or what they may need in the future, right? Chances are you're not going to sell them the right item. So asking those questions, taking a little time, listening to them, generally will come out to be a better overall experience for the customer, as well as a better long-term relationship for yourself in the sales role.
Yeah, because then you were in the respect of this customer, because they know you're new and they expect you to make some mistakes, but when you make fewer mistakes than they expect, they're impressed. And
Well,
they
that's
think,
it. That's
yeah.
it. I mean, we for years we sold a device from Zebra. It was a mobile computer, and when they came out with the new model, they put a camera in it. And when I first saw that, I was like, "Who is going to want a camera in that? They're just trying to get extra money." And lo and behold, when I started talking to the customers, they all want cameras, because they're like, "Oh,
Mm,
I could run this application here. And now I don't need to have this camera that I have separately. I could take it with my mobile computer, take the picture with my mobile computer." And I was like, "Oh, never thought of that."
mm,
Right. But I had to make sure that I didn't just get a predisposed and just say, or a judgment on that and just say, who would want a camera, right? It was more of, hey, they have this camera option, and here's where we've seen clients using that. Is that of interest to you? And if the client says yes, okay, that's an extra $200 option, right? You're just as long as you're aware of it.
yeah.
But not asking the question, and then all of a sudden, selling a piece of equipment to a customer, and then for them to find out later, really hurts. I think the other thing that's important is being able to call an audible, is what I call it, right? So we've prepared, we have a plan, we're trying to think of all the answers to the questions before they're answered, and then you're in the meeting, and then something else comes up, right? And something you didn't know, so you got to call an audible, right? And generally, I think that's really important. When I'm preparing with my salespeople, I will try to throw out questions to them to see how they're going to react, right? So, like, as an example, you might be sitting in front of a customer, and all of a sudden he says, "I need a better price." What are you going to say? And generally, a lot of the salespeople are like, "Well, let me see what I can do. Let me go talk to my boss." I was like, "You can't do that." I said, because you don't have a good answer for that. You have to be prepared to say, "Well, Mr. Customer, you're getting 40% off. It's a very fair price. It's very competitive. I might be able to do something if you were to do this,"
Hmm, hmm.
right? As an example. So, so I think that's really important. I think it's also important to understand, again, through listening to the customer, what options there are. So, we had a customer a number of years ago. One of my salespeople was laser focused on selling them this one solution. And then I asked the question about, it was a barcode terminal. How many times are you going to scan something during a shift? And he's like, 10 barcodes in a shift, right? It was very low scanning volume. And my salesperson was focused on selling them this one unit that happened to be a pretty expensive unit. And I was like, well, you got to talk to him about the other option. There's a unit out there for half the price. The scanner's not as good, but it only, he's only got to use it 10 times a shift. And my salesperson initially was like, well, I don't know if I want to do that. And I was like, he's going to find it. They're going to go do an internet search. They're going to find it. And then they're going to ask you the question, how come you didn't tell me about that? So, since that point, I've seen, like with my team, it's kind of interesting to watch, right? Where we've made mistakes, we've learned and we've done a better job next time. And I see that across, my whole organization. So it's actually exciting.
Right. Yeah. And an important point that you just made right at the end there is be authentic and put yourself in the customer's shoes. If the lower volume solution, which you're going to make a lower commission on, is the better solution for them, offer it.
Absolutely. Because, when, we had this discussion, when this was going on, I was like, they're going to find it and you're going to have a better long-term experience, right? This is sales is a long game. Right. It's not a short transaction, at least in our organization, it's not a short transactional thing. Our customers generally buy from us year in and year out. Or when, if they got to refresh their hardware in 3 years or 5 years, right, they're bringing us right back in. So, that expertise and making sure that you're giving the very best solution is important. I think the other big mistake that salespeople make is you have to make it easier for the client. And, big example of that is like a quote, right? A lot of times you'll get a customer that says, give me a quote for this. Well, give it to me with this option, give it to me with that option, give it to me that option. Now, before you know it, they have 5 different pieces of paper that, you understand what they are, but can generally get a little confusing for them. So, I always recommend go to that little extra effort, right? Put it on a spreadsheet. Really clearly explain to the customer what that is. Here's option 1, here's option 2, here's option 3. The biggest thing on a spreadsheet is do the math for them, right? Don't sum it all up, put a total on it, right? A lot of people will say, well, here's your cost for this, here's your cost for that. I'm like, sum it up and really try to make it easier for them. Again, put yourself in their position. If you got a document from someone, you just want to get to the answer. They got a zillion things going on, so make it easy for them.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, frictionless. I
Yeah.
like that a lot. Well, Mike, that has been a really good set of ideas and techniques that you've shared here today. I appreciate you being so willing to be forthcoming and essentially act as the sales manager to the audience that's watching this video.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. And it's, I never thought I was going to be a salesperson when I got out of college. And I kind of fell into it. But I enjoyed every day. And, I'm a people person. I love to talk to people. So it's been a great career.
Yeah. Interesting. Because my name is Mike and I have the same experience. When I graduated from college, I didn't think I was going into sales, but paid better.
Yes, it certainly did. Yeah. My college degree, certainly I did not put that to use, but yeah, it's been a great run, and I'm excited. I'm excited for all the new people coming into sales now, and the things that are happening in our industry.
Excellent. Well, they're going to be a little better prepared because of the video that we made today, Mike. Thank you very much.
I hope. Excellent. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. You take care.
All right. See ya.